Hello, this is Brian from the Bad Manners Podcast. I'm going to be reviewing an article from Revolver News called Betrayal. A new visa attack on American workers has just come to light. Something I talk about in other videos is the reality that Republicans, especially elected Republicans, have a very bad habit of emphasizing the needs of corporations and the financial elites over the needs of the common American. In my opinion, this is one of the leading reasons why Gen Z, despite having a generally conservative bent, sometimes pays interest to leftist economics, despite the fact that those economics do not work. They at least promise some relief from the circumstances that these young people find themselves in. So when I find articles like this highlighting exactly what those elected representatives are up to, it's always of interest to me. Let's get into it. This is how the betrayal never comes at voter straight, does it? It's either hidden for eons or comes wrapped in that fancy swamp language and some quaint little excuse about the economy, housing, or, quote, worker shortages. We've seen it all a million times, but the scam is always the same. American workers are told to be patient, work harder, learn a trade, and do everything right, while politicians and business lobbyists cook up new ways to bring in cheaper foreign labor through the side door. Before continuing, I just want to comment the importation of foreign labor to do jobs that Americans supposedly cannot do directly cripples the future well being of this country. Any job should be doable by an American, and they might not necessarily be the greatest at it at first, but the only way to have a highly skilled population is for them to have the opportunity to get into those fields, start learning the ropes, and then eventually over time they'll steadily acquire more skill as they ply their trade. Well, if you import foreign labor, Americans aren't going to get their chance to enter into the field because those jobs will have already been taken up by foreigners. In addition to that, because of the increased labor pool, the wages associated with those jobs will be suppressed. Since the 1965 Hart-Celler Act, which really imported large numbers of people of low skills and undermined the lowest echelons of American society, a lot of people were then encouraged to go to college because college would presumably be something that allows them to rise above the fray. Well, now those white collar jobs that were generated by college are again falling victim to things like H-1B visas. This is more foreigners taking jobs that Americans can certainly do, and if they couldn't do them, there should be an incentive for these corporations to take on new talent and cultivate it so that they can eventually be part of the long-term image of the United States. But because corporations, due to the way they're structured, demanding constant pursuit of short-term profits, there is no long-term vision. To pursue the most immediate source of profit, they want whatever talent they can get now, regardless of whether that talent is in the long-term interest of the United States. Continuing on, but we didn't fight this hard to get the border under control just to watch rhinos betray us and start building new loopholes and visa pipelines for their donor buddies. Americans are already stretched as thin as we can go. The trades are one of the last decent ways for a lot of young men to build a stable life. So, of course, DC wants to flood it with more foreign labor and act like it's a brand new smart solution. It's not, it's full on betrayal. So, with white collar jobs being under attack with visa programs such as H-1B, and the extant immigration policy the United States has had since 1965, plus it being compounded with them not controlling the borders, the trades have effectively become one of the final outlets for young Americans in particular to earn a good living. And part of the reason that they could earn that good living is the labor pool for that particular sector is simply not as large. Therefore, the pay associated with those very much needed skills is going to be elevated. This is a good thing. Elevated wages for American workers results in them being able to acquire more resources that will in turn be able to enable them to provide for the next generation of this country. So when you see politicians coming along saying that this foreign labor is needed in an area that Americans can do the job and they can acquire the skills to do the job. Just know that they are definitely betraying you because they are selling out the future of this country for temporary immediacy. One of the most important things about this is if we do not head it off now, then all sectors of the American economy will be equally inundated with foreign labor, suppressing wages. Wages haven't grown very much as it is over the preceding 5 decades, at least in terms of purchasing power adjusted for inflation. Continuing on. These spineless but crafty rhinos will tell the base one thing and then turn around and help donors undercut us. If you're an American worker, especially one trying to build a life through construction or the trades, this is your future they're messing with. Here's the thing, and this is the brutal reality. If those jobs were actually badly needed, people would flock to them as the value of those jobs go up, and therefore it further incentivizes people to pursue them. The American labor economy would adjust to address the needs that are emerging in the economy. In doing so, this would result in increased prosperity of the American people and the enhancement of the skills of its people. So this entire approach that these RINO Republicans are taking is directly harmful to our young Americans in particular, but the long-term stability of the entire country. But if Washington is already gearing up to flood these jobs with cheap foreign labor, then what exactly are Americans being told to work toward? Okay, so we have a quote here from somebody on X that says, "Take a look at this bill to introduce a new visa category called H2C that will bring in 500,000 construction workers. This explains why Mike Rowe was pushing people to go into the trade so hard. There's a shortage of workers. They're making 260K. It is a wonderful sign when there is a sector of the economy in which Americans can become wealthy through it, especially as the trades require a specific set of skills. It improves the overall quality of the American people when its people are becoming skilled in various domains. So instead of complaining that there's a shortage, when what there really is the American worker not having to compete with foreigners and therefore their value is relatively increased, these elite businesses or corporations have no choice to make do with what is available to them, and that's going to drive a higher premium for the value of those skills. So if you want Americans to earn a good living, you need to control the labor pool. Uh, the labor unions used to understand this before they became lockstep with Democrats that were importing the very labor that would undermine the strength of unions. And to some extent, the working man has always understood this reality. But if you're somebody watching this video, just know that anytime you see a claim that there is a worker shortage in a specific field, just know that it's corporations claiming that so they can hire foreigners. It absolves them of the need to hire and train Americans or to make use of existing American talent pools that are already there. Because without the increase in foreign workers, the amount that'll have to be paid to those workers is going to be relatively higher. And you should consider that a good thing, especially for those people that are not pro-corporation, which nowadays I would be surprised if you find many people sympathetic to corporations on the left or right. But if you really want to hit them where it hurts, make it to where they have to pay higher wages because there's only so much labor pool available to them. And I know some people more economically minded will point out that, well, those businesses might just go overseas or those jobs get outsourced. You're absolutely correct. That is possible. But so long as the American market is a desirable place to be, that problem can be addressed by tariffing the daylights out of those businesses. So there can be trade-offs arranged that the American labor force is not only encouraged to be paid more right now, but again, to ensure that Americans continue to become more skilled and pass on those skills to the ensuing generations. Americans are told to get trained, get serious, and build something with their hands, while politicians are already working on ways to make sure we fail miserably. Here's the real pitch. This should make things nice and clear for you. Representative Lloyd Smucker, his name's awfully close to schmuck, and that's what this guy is for this. The representative of Pennsylvania this week introduced the Essential Workers for Economic Advancement Act, bipartisan legislation aimed at expanding visa opportunities to address labor shortages in construction, hospitality, and other sectors. The very naming of most legislation typically already gives you an idea that whatever it says it's doing, it's probably in effect accomplishing the opposite. These are not essential workers. And if they are essential workers, they are absolutely things that the American people are fully capable of doing. The only issue is corporations do not want to pay increased wages because it suppresses their relative profit margins. That's it. It is financial interests against the people. Nothing more. Continuing on. This isn't America first. This is a Republican helping to reintroduce a bill to expand visa opportunities in exactly the sectors where American workers are trying to get a leg up. Also, before continuing on, one thing worth pointing out, notice that this says bipartisan legislation. One of the few things that both parties can get behind is more migration. The left gets to import voters because they have long since abandoned any sense of fealty to the American people and their prospects. They have a fetish for all things foreign. And conservatives that somehow manage to get elected to Washington magically turn into corporatists that love nothing more than to push legislation that directly benefits corporations. As far as American first politicians, they are few and far between. And this is self-evident given that you got people in Ohio running for governor that are generally in favor of foreign workers, and even our current president has made no attempt to shut down H-1B visas in their entirety, despite the obvious fraud that's connected to them and the potential national security risks. Basically, if you are a young conservative, neither political party is operating in your best interest. And they're not even pretending to. Sure, those on the right might claim, well, we're America first. Well, when it comes to damaging the bottom line of corporations, they won't go that far. Continuing on. But wait, there's more insult to injury. This is the part where they try to sell the whole thing as, quote, practical and, quote, unavoidable. Like there's just no other possible answer except bringing in more foreign workers. Them calling it unavoidable is to create the impression in your mind that it is an inevitability and so absolutely necessary that there's no other possible solution. No, there is another possible solution. It is just one that is inconvenient to those business interests. Nothing more. We know from well-established experiences of various IT workers over time that these foreign workers are not even bringing the same skill sets on average as what the Americans they replaced already had. They are simply cheaper. And in this age of monopolized markets, corporations not meaningfully have to compete against much else, having the cheapest bottom line benefits them because it doesn't matter if their products are of inferior quality. There aren't as many options as there used to be. Continuing on. The Essential Workers Bill proposes a new H-2C visa program for critical jobs that do not require a college degree but are essential to business operations and U.S. economic growth. They call these jobs critical because it's designed to plant the idea in your mind that they simply cannot be gone without. But if they're critical and they don't require a college degree, they are something a young man or woman in the United States could absolutely be apprenticed into and learn it and implement it. The foreigners are not necessary at all. If it was truly a desperate need, the businesses would have apprenticeship programs themselves. You already see this in the trades, in fact. You will see them frequently go out of their way to take on apprentices in times where demand exceeds the supply of labor available. Force corporations to do the same. None of this unpaid internship nonsense. Allow young Americans to start getting their feet set in these industries they're trying to work in. Quote, job creation and job preparation must go hand in hand, Rep. Schmucker said. Investing in opportunities to strengthen our workforce and grow our economy is a win-win for American workers and businesses. No, it is a win-win. No, it's not even a win-win. It is a win for American corporations and some elite businesses that happen to be private. It is not a win for American workers. It is a win for foreign workers because they will generate profits here that they send as remittances to their home country. The whole notion of growing the economy is not God. The integrity of the American people is more important than any notion of economic growth that can be spurred by the importation of migrants to do work. And when I say the American people, I don't just mean in the short term. You need a vision that both provides for the short term and for the long term. And anything that would harm the long-term prospects of future generations of Americans must be rejected. So this guy, he's obviously bought and paid for, and I wouldn't be surprised if we find out by who in this article. There's an estimated shortage of 500,000 construction workers. Americans can do construction work. Without additional labor, efforts to build more housing and address the nation's affordability crisis will remain stalled. So one of the most pervasive myths is that you need foreign labor because without the foreign labor, Americans simply won't do these jobs. That is not true. They will not do the jobs at the price point that those businesses are trying to offer. So these businesses in turn create business models that can only remain profitable with foreign labor, which is already an indication that whatever their business model is not sustainable or well planned, because they need suppressed wages in order to continue functioning at all. And before we can continue on, one thing that should be pointed out is if you allowed the wages to actually rise, as they would if you're not importing foreign labor, eventually there will come a point where people will do that work. So Americans will do those jobs, but the pay has to make it a sufficient incentive. If you imported the entire world here, all wages would collapse. So it's just a matter of a scale. Anyway, God forbid we make these jobs more attractive to Americans. No, the answer always comes back to cheap, cruddy labor. And if that's not bad enough, look at who's cheering this mess on. 21 other business groups support the bipartisan Essential Workers Bill, including the American Hotel and Lodging Association, Associated General Contractors of America, Business Roundtable, Leading Builders of America, and the National Association of Home Builders. They all want to pay a decreased wage. That is their primary concern. Because if the labor they're looking for is not there already, and that mainly stems from the reality that people do not want to do that work at that wage. But if those wages rose because they absolutely needed people to do the work, they would find people willing to do the work. And there's more than enough unemployed Americans that it would be viable. The business lobby loves this stuff. More labor, more flexibility, lower costs, and less pressure to raise wages or invest in American workers. The key point that the author of this article makes is invest in American workers. When you are training up an American worker, it is a long-term investment in the country. It's not just the job they're doing in the short term. Yeah, you can make the argument that somebody new to a trade is going to be worse than the veterans, sure, but that person will become better over time. They will become an expert in their field. They will procreate, and the next generation will follow them, and that'll be a skilled person that will in turn be raising their offspring, and perhaps those skills get passed on, and so on and so forth. This is a desirable outcome. Corporations do not want to invest in American workers. They have to appease their shareholders by pursuing short-term profit gains. They are basically disallowed from any long-term vision, which is effectively why almost every corporation now produces increasingly inferior products over time. They're not actually, they do not have a long-term vision in which they're accomplishing some grand goal. And toward that end, cheaper labor, even if it's inferior, is better for what their goals are. But if their goals come to fruition, the United States gets hollowed out because whatever work was done here, the money ends up going elsewhere. And the skills that are developed from the people that come here and get to ply their trade do not necessarily stay here. If they do stay here, that runs into other issues of, is that person even compatible with American society? And as we well know from seeing the after effects of multiculturalization, there's at least a 50% chance they're not. If Republicans are serious about putting this country back together, they can't keep fighting for their donors. They need to actually fight for the people they represent. No more of these old labor import tricks every time some industry wants cheap workers fast. The current president fell for this too. He's actually under this belief that, oh, we really need these supremely talented foreigners because, man, Americans just can't do the work. He obviously has horrible advisors that, despite the fact he tries to be America first, whoever he's listening to has led him down a path that is anything but. In fact, it is one of the major leading reasons that you are seeing his numbers tank in general, and that's because there is widespread disillusionment regarding his conduct on the economy, and specifically the not trying to tackle the legal immigration side at all. In fact, he's very clear he wants to promote it as much as possible by, making citizenship easier for foreigners that graduate from American colleges, and things of that general nature. So it'll take a different leader to actually get around to addressing this problem. But this is a problem that has far more consequence in the short and long term for Americans than any issue, and that includes things like Iran. But that's just my thoughts. If you like anything I had to say, like, follow, comment, subscribe. Have a good night.